Hi, my name's Adam Beer and I'm the studio manager and head engineer here at the Marshall Studio. This is Ollie Brightman, the studio assistant. Come take a look inside. Welcome to our main live room. So this room is the heart of the studio. So it was a theatre and it was built in the early 90s to be Jim's theatre. And we've kept the spirit of Jim's theatre alive. Stage, lighting rig, little PA. So this is also a 200 cap venue. So it gives us a lot of flexibility in this space, not just to record records, but to put on shows, album launches, video shoots, that kind of thing. This space I call the mezzanine, despite the fact there's nothing above it. But having this super low ceiling is really handy for kind of dead, dry drums. So when we did the Nova Twins record, we wanted really kind of trashy, dead drums. So we did them right here. We boxed them in. We ended up, I don't know if you can see it, there's some sheets of metal back here. And they're actually sheets of metal that we use to make the amps over in the factory. And we put them on the wall behind the drum kit for that real dry trash sound, which sounds amazing on the record. We also use this area for, we did a string quartet. It didn't sound quite as good for that particular quartet out in the main space. We needed a bit more control because it was for an R&B record. So we put it under here, which meant that it was a super dry sound and we could get all the attack of the strings. So yeah, we use this kind of space as that, the kind of the dead sound. But because it's part of the main live room, we're able to exploit the sound of a big room if you want to put some room mics out that way. The same with if you want to put something out that way, you could put like a little ball and biscuit or something in here, which kind of sounds a bit drier, less big. So having the two separate parts of the studio, the kind of main auditorium space and this kind of mezzanine space is really handy. Also means you've got space for a vocal booth. We don't actually ever use for vocals, we tend to use it for guitar cabs.
Speaking of vocals, because the room's so big, you'd probably, if we don't use that for vocals, what do we use? So we tend to use all these acoustic panels that are just behind you here. And we tend to just build a vocal booth around the glass. It just means you've got a lot more like connection with the artist when you're recording. You can communicate a lot better. And it helps just to deaden the room a little bit more. Even though it's not particularly live anyway, just helps to control it a little bit.
Being attached to the factory has been a real benefit for us because we are able to then have the full gambit of Marshall products. And one of the great things about Marshall amplifiers is they're general purpose amplifiers. I don't think people realise quite how versatile they are. We've got everything from the cleanest, chimiest cleans through to proper nu metal, heavy metal, tight bottom end stuff and everything in between. So having loads of backline, and we own a drum brand called Natal, and having 2 or 3 drum kits has been really helpful for kind of inspiration. We've been able to say to artists, you know, why don't you just spend half an hour or even half a day just playing around? We've got a little room upstairs that we use as a kind of edit suite, development room, whatever. And just being able to say, right, take 2 or 3 amps, go away. And you'll often find that someone comes back and goes, oh, I was playing with this clean setting and I've really found something that works with the bridge or whatever. So having stuff has just been really handy for creativity. And we're really lucky to be in a position where we were able to have excellent quality products made on our doorstep.
The other thing with that as well is things do tend to go wrong in studios. So if a band ever blows up an amp and it happens to be a Marshall, or even if it's not, usually we just take it across like 20 meters away and then someone will have a look at it, try and fix it up. And usually, more often than not, they get pretty much a free service on their amp, don't they?
Yeah, they do, yeah.
So,
the amount of people that turn up with an amp and go, as I'm here, do you reckon they could just have a look at the tubes? Valves.
Yeah, it's useful. It's useful being that close to the factory.
We'll do a quick demonstration of kind of a classic Marshall guitar sound and something that we do on a daily basis here at the studio. So over here we've got a lovely little 2x12 cabinet with some vintage 30s in it, and we'll use an AKG D19 and a Royal 121, that kind of classic dynamic and ribbon combination, just offset from the start of the cone, the dynamic on the glue point. And one of the things I really like to do as a room mic is use something with a tight polar pattern or a figure of 8, actually pointing in line with the cab. I don't know where I got it. I've been doing it for years and it always sounds amazing as a room mic. So Ollie here will play some guitar and we'll see what it sounds like.
Every single good drum sound that we've got has been off of one of those 2 kits there. The one we used with Dan Weller last time was this Copper Sparkle here. Everyone always brings their own kits and expects to use that, and then they end up loving all the stuff that Natal put out, so it's really handy having a brand like that supporting the studio. And the other thing is loads of spares are kept in the factory over there, so we can always go and grab something if someone needs whatever they need.
So we're in the control room now at the studio. Just through the glass there is the live room. It's a separate building. It's actually in the car park of the factory. You'd never know. It's the coolest thing in a car park ever. The control room, and the reason we've done all this is because of our console. So this is a 1974 Neve 8048 that was originally in Patho Marconi Studio D. So we know that this did Some Girls and Tattoo You by the Stones, and we know it did Black Rose by Thin Lizzy. We've had Chris Kimsey come in and Brian Downey, both, recognised the old girl, and it's a Blake Devitt desk. So Blake has taken it apart and rebuilt it using new old stock parts. I mean, the youngest thing in the console are the faders, and we chose these because everything else is a bit grey, so a nice bit of Scandi cream and silver actually lifts the thing. And we're so lucky to have it here. There's been some really excellent mods and stuff that Blake has done to it. My favourite being actually the patch bay being moved to the middle and the patch bay being taken out, because there's nothing I hate more, because I'm very clumsy, than a lovely old big console and then Pro Tools on a tiny little table on the left hand side, because more often than not, as I get up, I knock it flying. So being able to have everything in the middle means that it's super easy to do as a solo, to fly solo and to use it in that way. So you've got 40 channels of 32 channels of 1093, modelled after EMI Neve stuff. So they're super fast, super punchy, really amazing sounding EQs. And then at the bottom here we've got what was 8 returns originally, now turned into another 8 preamps, and these are all Class A, custom made preamps, some 1066s and some made out of old filter units, the 2065s. And these on ribbon microphones on rooms and drums just are unbelievable. So having a lovely big old Neve like this really gives us, well, yeah, it sets us apart. It's one of those things that means we're serious. When we took the patch bay out of the end of the desk and made it into the middle section for the computer, we needed a patch bay. So Blake had found this, and it's an old EMI Neve, you can see by its rake, and we turned this into the patch bay. And it's also really nice to have a kind of co-pilot seat. Quite often you find there's, a big old console and chairs, and someone wants to sit and do some drum editing on a laptop. It's a really nice place for that. Plus it's a massive GPO patch, which does look impressive. One of the things we've been doing recently is we often put heads on here when we're doing guitar recordings. We had a producer in, he went, well, wouldn't it be nice if you could have a pair of monitors so when you're twiddling the amp you can hear? So we've just stuck some monitors up there and a phase meter. We're working with Focusrite, so we've got the RedNet converters, do everything over Dante, and Focusrite have been really amazing, and these have been really amazing as well. They allow us to pump music out of the speakers in the roof there, the speakers out the roof in the foyer. Just gives us that flexibility to be able to say, you don't need all 27 members of the band in the control room. They can go to the bar and they can actually hear what's going on, and you don't end up with, it's like you have hordes of people with laptops on their on their laps and the fans are going, and you're able to go outside, we'll play you what we're listening to. Has been really helpful. We've got some classic bits and pieces, the DBXs and Alan Smarts and stuff, but through Blake we've been able to get some really exciting bits and pieces. So these are 3 BBC Neve compressors that have got a passive 320 millisecond delay in them. and they sound so explosive on room mics. We used that one on the piano room mic just now. It really is a special thing. Got a pair of pies, a couple more of the stereo delays. Let me show you what the inside of one of them looks like, because someone made that, and it always blows my mind every time I look at it. That is the 5 separate delay lines.
How long is the delay?
320 milliseconds. So put that back in there. Classic bits and pieces up here. We use the JMP1 and the Kemper a lot for guide tracks. And the JMP1 is actually much maligned and kind of forgotten about. It's like the original Kemper, really. It was the Marshall MIDI controlled amp. Inside this valve preamp is all the circuits. So if you look at kind of overdrive 1, that's the circuit of Plexi, and clean is the circuit of JTM45. So that's a really cool little thing. This old girl is a Austrian made compressor. It's a 21-inch old style. It doesn't fit in the rack. And that is the most hilarious thing in the world, because it's expecting a very posh German voice. And if you put a bass through it, it's like the best Sans amp you've ever heard, because it just doesn't know what to do with the signal. A Neve distortion unit. So we think this might be one of the only ones they ever made. And this was made kind of to be telephone distortion, but we've had it modified to do the full band. And it's actually quite polite distortion in today's world, but actually on a drum room mic or a parallel for a vocal, it's kind of got that bite to it, which just elevates it slightly. These are from a Decca console from the 1960s. So you've got the EQ and you've got a pair of compressors. And the compressors weren't in the console, the meters were. That's why they've been taped to the top, because the meters would have been in the console and the compressors would have been on the side. All together as a collection, it's stuff you know and stuff you don't, which really helps kind of add flavour. Because we have lots of different producers come through. Some record completely dry, no EQ, no compression, they take it away to their little mix room. Some people absolutely adore being able to go, I've never used one of them before, let's stuff something through it and see what happens. Yeah, this Yamaha SPX 990 little effects unit I got for 70 quid. And sometimes an old 90s reverb is exactly what you want. So that's a really fun thing to play with. We also bought 4 channels of SSL preamp, because sometimes it can be too Neve in here. I know it's something you never thought you'd say, but sometimes you need something that isn't Neve all the time. Yeah. So we're primarily a rock and roll tracking studio. So we needed rock and roll tracking speakers. And we tried out quite a few different brands in here. And they were all wonderful, but nothing quite felt right until these big Questers came in. And they changed the game in this room. They suit us down to the ground. The stereo imaging is pin perfect, and the reproduction is incredible. One of the things that we suffered from to begin with is you kind of, as you get lower in the frequencies, the sub bass and thing gets a bit muddy. These are crystal clear all the way down to 20 hertz. You can hear the difference between your sub bass and your kick drums and all the other bits and pieces, and they translate so well. I wasn't expecting to be able to do such good work on main monitors. So having these has been a game changer for the studio. It's allowed us to really produce seriously good quality stuff. The number one thing people love about this place is we have a licensed bar out the front and beer on tap all the time. And the second thing people love about this place is how big everything is. So big room, big speakers, big Neve, big guitar sound, big drum sound. And we've worked super hard to make it vibey and to make sure that people come through the door and they're wowed by it. And for a Marshall being an amp brand, the studio's actually gained a reputation for drums. Having big, huge room drum sounds through the big old Neve makes things sound massive. So we're having people return just on that basis. They return just for the drum sound. What else do people love?
Well, I was going to say, I think what people love the most is that everything works.
Oh God, yeah.
Because often you go into a studio and they'll be like, oh yeah, we've got this great Neve desk, but actually you can't use half the desk. That preamp doesn't work, and we've only got 3 microphones and that outboard doesn't work. So literally, Blake, who built the desk, only lives a few miles down the road. So whenever we have an issue, we give him a call and he'll be down within a day, usually, and we get it fixed. And as it stands right now, literally everything is working. And, you know.
We've tried to take a holistic approach to the building, the space, everything in the space, and try to make it as kind of artist focused as possible, to make sure that kind of when you come here you get the most out of your time.
I'd say also just like the vibe. We actually made, well, I'd like to think this place it's a comfortable space and everyone kind of always feels welcome and is comfy, there's space for everything. The other thing is being attached to the factory again, is there's always other people coming in and out that maybe speaking to someone might spark up a conversation to get them a certain gig or a certain relationship or something like that. So there's always conversations being had outside and in and around.
Yeah, it's become a music hub, isn't it? It's become a hub for not just Marshall as a brand, but you know, musicians, technicians, producers. It's become a kind of meeting place already. Hi, I'm Adam, head engineer and studio manager here at the Marshall Studio. And this is Ollie.
Do I introduce myself?
Who also works at the Marshall Studio.
Let's do that one more time.
Yeah.
That was...
Rubbish?
Yes.
Yes.